Hey guys, it's Steve from the Shaky podcast here. Just letting you know that today's a bit of a different episode. This is our interview with Josh from the YouTube channel Movie Timelines. He came on and talked to us for an hour and a half just about horror movies. Yeah, it was great. We loved it. Just to let you know, the episode might sound a little bit different just because we recorded it on Skype, which we've never done before, and it doesn't allow for, the same level of editing that our usual setup does. That being said, I hope you enjoy the show, and here it is.
In the summer of 2020, 3 Scottish young men went missing in the search for the perfect movies. A year later their footage was found. This is the Shaky Chem podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to a very special episode of the Shaky Cam podcast. Today we're doing a little interview. I'm here with Joe and Chris as usual.
Hello.
Hello.
And today we're joined by Josh, who you may know from the YouTube channel Horror Timelines.
Morning.
Thank you so much for coming on, Josh. It's great. Hopefully we can just have a conversation about horror movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely.
So let's start off with the kind of easiest question, and taking a line from Scream. What's your favourite scary movie?
Oh man, this is kind of an easy question because I think my favorite horror film is just my favorite film, which is just Jaws. It's one that I think that some people don't call horror, but those people are silly because Jaws is a horror movie. It's in my opinion, it's damn near close to a perfect film. It's one of the best written films. It's genuinely scary, and it's just a great movie.
Nice, yeah. That's a lot. I have seen people say that they don't consider Jaws a horror movie, but I also know a lot of people who refuse to go in water for years and years after seeing Jaws. So
I'm one of them. I will not go in the ocean past my knees. That's as far as I will go.
No, fair enough. So is that kind of tied to something else I wanted to ask you? Like, is that like an early memory of horror? Like, what's the sort of earliest thing you remember being sort of scared by, and that kind of igniting your love for horror or something like that?
Well, it's a kind of a funny thing because I did not get into horror movies until I was older. When I was younger, apparently I was terrified of horror movies. I don't have many memories of this, but apparently my mom took us to go see Alien when I was very young. She worked at a school, and the school actually was showing Alien, and she took us to go see it. And I was like a little kid, and apparently I did not watch a single frame of the movie. My head was buried in the seat for the entire time. I was a chicken, and it wasn't until probably like my mid-teens that I started really getting into horror movies. And I can tell you, if you want to talk about memories that kind of sparked the interest, I think the thing that clicked me off into that world was a documentary called Scream Greats, and it was about Tom Savini. Right. And it was basically almost like a little how-to video. It was kind of like, hey, here's the special effects he did, and here's how he did them. And from that moment on, horror movies stopped being a scary thing for me that frightened me and turned into a game of how did they do that?
Right. Yeah. I'm exactly the same. When I was younger, everything scared me as a kid. Everything scared me. It wasn't until I was maybe 14 or 15 and I actually think it was Freddy versus Jason. I watched this. It's not scary. It's not scary at all, but it sort of ignited the interest in that. And I think once I realised that those characters aren't scary in that movie, I could handle watching everything else.
Fun.
Yeah, totally.
I saw that movie opening weekend in
Oh
the
yeah,
theater. I was very, very excited for that movie.
yeah, because they did the like fake weigh-in and stuff in Vegas and all
Oh
that kind
yeah,
of stuff. Like,
Did they?
yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
great idea.
You know,
Oh,
and Freddy versus Jason too. Not to go off on a quick tangent about it, but man, you know, if I can just explain the experience of watching that in a movie theater, because like
Yeah.
for the first hour of that movie, I'm sitting there going like, what is this? What am I watching? This is terrible. What's going on here? And then all of a sudden, for like the last half hour of the movie, like I walked out of that movie going, that was amazing. But you have to get through that first hour to get there. But that last half hour is like one of the greatest things you will ever see.
Definitely.
That's my exact experience watching that movie.
Yeah.
I could just skip the first half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's basically it's the exact moment of when they get to the camp and like it's like well, actually I could peg it down. The exact moment that movie starts to turn is when Jason cuts the kid in half, and then it's like they go into the dream world, and it's like from that moment on, from the moment that Jason enters the dream world, it's awesome from that point on. And I'm sorry about the cattail that's popping.
Oh,
up
it's
here.
cool. No, yeah, that's totally.
No, whilst we're talking about it, 1978's Alligator was my introduction into horror movies. I don't know if you've seen that, but that would be a good one for Failure to Launch.
No, actually, Alligator, I'm actually working on something special for it. Alligator, believe it or not, has a sequel. There is an Alligator 2 out there.
Nice.
There's, it's, I can't believe I forget her name. I feel really terrible here. But I actually am thinking about doing the movie Alligator at some point. There you go. But the female lead of that movie is an actress named Robin Riker that my wife happens to know and has worked with on a feature called Psycho Granny, which is a great little movie. My wife did the costumes for. And we met Robin Riker, and Robin Riker's invited us over to her house, and like we went to like a Christmas party there and everything. And she's a really great lady, and actually floated the idea. I said, look, would you want to watch Alligator with us? And she loves it. She has like such great memories of it and everything like that. So I am planning on doing Alligator. Yeah, but I want to see if Robin wants to participate in it as well too, because it would be kind of fun to have one of the stars of the movie there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's great.
But
what a great movie, by the way. What the best Jaws knockoff that was ever made. It's such a good movie.
So what is it about horror do you think that's so appealing to yourself and to everyone sort of as a whole?
You know what? It's just I really think that what it comes down to is just triggering emotion, because really the movies that we love the most are movies that trigger a genuine emotion. If you watch something that can genuinely make you sad, like it affects you more. If you watch a movie that genuinely makes you happy, and horror it's a genuine emotion, like that fear's an actual emotion. Like I think you go to the theater looking to experience that feeling. And horror it's kind of an easy way to get to that feeling, and it brings up a nostalgia aspect of when you were young. It's just, I don't know, that's what it appeals to for me. It's that whole like sitting down and just kind of being along for the ride.
Totally, I get that. It's like the same sort of idea as maybe like going on a roller coaster. It's like the sort of closest you can get to that feeling of fear without kind of being in a dangerous situation. With Horror Timelines, the channel, what gave you the inspiration to start looking at these movies in that way? Because obviously a lot of horror movies and their sequels are kind of a mess. So like what gave you the sort of idea to jump in and try and fix it, basically?
Well, it literally all came down. It came down to I had a point in my life where I was really looking for a creative outlet. I'd worked on I'd done a feature film called The Complex, which is actually, you can watch it on my channel. And after that, we're just kind of like doing some short films here and there, some kind of things. My wife and I had done like a web series just for basically for us, but it was very difficult getting her to participate, and I kind of just wanted to make something where I could just do it on my own time frame. And I happened to be watching Friday the 13th, and there was a point where it was actually Friday the 13th Part 7, and it was the part where that has the rather extreme time jump of like little Tina, and she's like this little girl, but then all of a sudden she's a grown up, and it just struck into my head. It's just like, so wait, it's like, what year is this then if 10 years have passed? And then I just started looking back at the old ones, and I finally just sat down and watched them all together. And like as soon as the second movie came on, and they're like 5 years ago, I was just like, wait, 5 years? Well, hold on. Okay, so now we're getting into these massive time jumps. So then I just started to sketch it all out, and I'm not joking when I tell you that the original plan was just to do that one video, and it's just like a lark of something for me to do creatively, and I thought it was a lot of fun, so I ended up just kept doing it and coming up with other things. That's why if you watch my second video ever was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it's not really a timeline. It's kind of more like me discussing the different Leatherfaces. It was because at that particular point I hadn't quite figured out what the channel was going to be yet. So that was kind of like the early start of it, but it just became this interesting thing of going through the franchises, and honestly, it was just a good excuse for me to rewatch some fun old movies that I hadn't seen in a while.
What when you do a video, typically is there a lot of rewatching of the series? Do you have to go over movies multiple times, or does it usually just?
No, it's usually one watch, but it's a slow watch. It's a slow watch where I'm like pausing a lot. I'll rewind specific scenes, but for the most part, for a timeline, there's a lot of things that don't really require super close attention. For example, if a movie like literally in the opening title card is like May 15th, 1985, right across the screen, I kind of pull back a little bit, so there's not as much need for me to stare at every single newspaper. I mean, and then if people are wandering around in the woods, I don't have to pay as close attention. It's usually the scenes where somebody's in an office, the scene where somebody is near a calendar, or if it's a city street with like posters up on the wall. Those are usually the scenes that I have to like stop, rewind, pause 100 times, put in slow motion, because I'm like looking around for clues. I'm looking for movie posters in the background to like say what year it was, because that movie was out, so it has to be this year. Those are the kind of things I have to rewatch, but it doesn't really require a lot of rewatching of the films, but more rewatching of sections.
Right. Okay.
Does it shock you how many directors and movie makers completely disregard that side of it and just do not care?
Yeah, it is pretty surprising. It's weird because I guess like in the long run I kind of get it, because it's a weird concept of just like throwing aside every bit of continuity, and I think that you kind of get to a point where, like, I understand that a director just wants to tell the story that they want to tell. It may not match up with everything else, and I think that the kind of in the past it didn't matter as much. Like when we're in a pre-internet age, either from what I recall, no one really paid that much attention to this kind of stuff and didn't care as much about it, or they just didn't have as much outlet to talk about it. I mean, I was around pre-internet. Like my childhood was all pre-internet, and I don't ever remember discussing like continuity between films for the most part. But like, I don't think a lot of people used to think that anybody would pay this close attention to it or have an outlet for it. Definitely no one ever thought that there'd be a point of like home video Blu-ray pausing on a scene and zooming in to see what date it is on a newspaper. I don't think anybody ever thought of that. Some of the things are kind of funny when you take a Friday the 13th concept and all of a sudden Jason is now a body hopping alien, that has never been mentioned in 8 movies worth. Like something like that is rather abrupt. Again, I get it. They wanted to tell a different kind of a story and not say the same thing over and over and over again. But it is kind of like it's definitely always kind of surprises me when it's just kind of like, wait, didn't they just say that?
Yeah.
I suppose maybe as well, something like recently with like sort of things like the MCU and things like that, where the continuity is really tight knit.
Yes.
It's been like it opens other series up to sort of being judged, I guess. But I don't know if that's so maybe like going forward, horror movie series like the Conjuring series is kind of quite well laid out, as you covered in a video. But
except for the Annabelle movies, which I think they are all over the place continuity wise, but yeah, I think that the more recent focus towards having a shared universe kind of a thing has definitely made people pay a little closer attention to continuity. Not from a standpoint of like, we need to make sure that this takes place in the proper year, but I think that they're trying to at least be like, well, in this movie it said that he's afraid of water, and yet in this movie he's like swimming. So I think that kind of thing they pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is there a series that you've covered that took quite a while to do? Like the longest one that it took you to kind of figure out?
There's some. I'm trying to think of which ones were. Yeah. You know what? Yeah, I do have an. I was thinking, are one of these going to come right to my head? But yes, it is. Puppet Master. The Puppet Master series is particularly frustrating with its timeline, because a lot of the movies just don't pay attention to the things, whereas Puppet Master like literally contradicts its own timeline, to the point of, here's a movie, we tell you it's 1943, here's this guy, he's dead. And then like 3 movies later, okay, it's 1945, here's this guy. Wait, isn't he dead? I don't know. It's just it just got really frustrating because it was basically, it wasn't as if that they weren't paying attention to their timeline. It was almost as if they were like deliberately just messing with their own timeline. And it got to the point where I was like going back. I was just like, wait, what year was this one supposed to be? Wait, where is this? Like, how is this supposed to take place? And that one was more frustrating than most. And then plus some of those movies are just very difficult to watch.
Yeah, that's those movies cross over with other franchises and stuff as well. They kind of get a bit messy. So
yeah.
Than not. Yeah.
I'll be honest, I thought you were going to say the Amityville horror series there.
Amityville was a kind of interesting one. Amityville was hard to get through from a watching standpoint, but it wasn't one that I had to think about the timeline for, mainly because most of the movies didn't connect. So it was kind of like watching an anthology. So it was, believe it or not, as a timeline, it was easier to put together because everything, I was just dealing with it a movie at a time. I didn't have to think about how it connects to the other ones. But holy crap. That one was just hard. It was just hard to watch altogether.
I was surprised when watching that video. There was one that we watched, or I had watched previously for a podcast episode. It was like Annalise, the Exorcist tapes or something like that. It's like a found footage movie that's set in the 40s or something like that.
Oh yeah,
and the whole movie shot with like the film grain and stuff. I was so bad. I couldn't believe that someone else had seen it. I thought I was the only one.
That's on the Paranormal Activity, because that one was that Exorcist tapes that one was released as like Paranormal Entity 2 or something like that. So it was part of like that knockoff. But yeah, that I always thought that was so great, and I talk about that a lot in the thing about, because it's supposed to be like 1972 or something like that, and like everything is like this high def video. It's crazy. That one was one of the worst movies that I've seen in a long time.
So sorry, I've just what can I jumping around here? With sort of, we touched briefly on sort of modern horror. Like, what do you think is the, like, going forward? Like, what do you kind of think of like modern horror movies and stuff? Are they as enjoyable or as scary as kind of older movies?
Well, kind of. We're in a really interesting time for horror, because I mean, you've got basically two worlds of horror right now, because you've got the mainstream horror, and horror is as mainstream as it's ever been. This is a very positive time to be a horror film fan, because of, number one, it's extremely profitable, so they keep on making more movies. And then you've got the independent horror scene, which I think is just booming, with like these guys that are really taking risks and making these more artistic, just really great little horror flicks. I mean, I will admit that I'm not a fan of the I call them horror light movies, like The Conjuring and Insidious and the Blumhouse kind of genre of films. My joke with them is that it's like, as a horror fan, and seeing people like those movies is kind of like, if you have a favorite artist, like you're a huge David Bowie fan and you've been listening to him your entire life, and then somebody comes out and be like, oh, I love David Bowie, and then in their car they're listening to the Greatest Hits album, and it's kind of like, that's how I feel about the Conjuring movies. I feel like they're a Greatest Hits compilation. It's like,
yeah,
when you watch those movies, it just feels like, okay, well, we've seen The Exorcist, we've seen Amityville, we're just taking all the best parts of those movies and kind of putting something together in a nice, easily packaged form. I think they're really well made movies, but they don't really hit it for me in terms of any sort of creativity or fun or originality. It's just nothing I haven't seen before. But I do think, like, I will admire all of those movies for how well they're made. They're very nicely put together. But then you do have this little independent horror scene right now. I'd say some of the, probably more notable, probably bigger excursions are like Hereditary and Midsummer and those kind of things, where you've got the Witch and these art house horror films. I'd even lump Mandy in there. I don't know if Mandy is strictly horror, but kinda.
Yeah.
And there are directors that are kind of taking a chance with things and pushing the envelope a little bit, and these things feel fresh. And it's. I personally think that I've been watching horror for a long time, and I think that this is one of the best times for horror films that I can recall. Although probably second only to the 80s.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great nowadays, the kind of diverse options that you have for watching horror.
Yes.
Like at least over here, when we became the age where you could go see movies yourself, around 10, 12 years ago, whenever, it was every 6 months there's a horror movie out, we better go see it and hope it's good. Whereas now, like, you could watch them every day, all year, and not run out of stuff.
Yeah, it is like this. We are spoiled for choice right now, because I mean we've got an entire streaming channel that's all horror movies. I mean, but like if I could go back in time and tell a little kid me to be like, hey, you could watch horror movies like 24 hours if you want. There's gonna be a channel to do that. That would be very surprising.
Yeah, I think. Christian.
I was going to say, it's a shame that some of these independent horror movies don't get the love from people outside of horror. For example, this week I watched After Midnight, which is essentially a love story.
I need to watch it.
But because you class it as a horror movie, a lot of people out with the horror genre tend to not trust it, stay away from it, when it's a beautiful film that's just waiting there to be appreciated.
Yeah, After Midnight, I was on I did a list of like the 10 best movies, best horror movies I watched in quarantine, and that was actually my number one. I didn't know that movie was released. I was a fan of the director's The Battery, which is the movie he made previously, and I thought it was a very good zombie movie. But I did not know about After Midnight until well after it was released, and like I was late to the game on that. But it is a great movie, and it is kind of like a shame because I do think that like fans of like a nice drama would enjoy that film. Another movie that comes to mind when you talk about something like that is, I don't know if you've seen the movie Spring, which
I have.
I'm going to be covering that because that's sort of a part of a series. It's part of the Resolution Endless series that there actually is some connective tissue between all three of those. But that movie is, if you watch the trailer for it, it looks like a horror movie, and it is absolutely not. It's a very romantic love story, and it's a beautiful, beautiful movie.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I went to the premiere of Synchronic here in the UK, which is Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead's latest. And what they said in their Q&A was that they'll never contradict their sort of time travel theory. So it's not necessarily a universe, but they're going to keep this sort of similar idea and similar theory and not contradict each other in the movies.
Oh, that's cool. I love that. Yeah. Well, I'm a fan of those guys, and basically they've made 3 movies that I just adore at this point, because Resolution is a great flick. Spring is even better, and Endless is just even better. I mean, every movie has been an improvement. So,
the sort of over here, it's a little harder to see indie horror. Chris goes to Fright Fest every year, and sort of watches the newest ones, but our streaming services are a little lacking. But it's good to see. I agree with what you say about the sort of Insidious and Conjuring movies. Most of the time when you go see them here, the screens are full of screaming children, kind of 13-year-olds, which is cool. Like it's hard because it's cool like that kids are getting into horror movies, but it's also hard to sit and watch a movie when you can't hear what's happening because kids are screaming at the screen and stuff like that. But it's hard. I've sat through packed cinema screens for, like Annabelle Comes Home, and then I went to see Us, and at the end of the movie, people were standing up and saying that they'd wasted like 2.5 hours of their life. Oh, super strange. Yeah, I know it's hard to, but I don't know. I like current horror movies, and I'm kind of hoping that we don't go back into like another dip of heavy remake territory, because the kind of early 2000s were super sketchy with that stuff. Just remake after remake for a while. I don't know what you think about that kind of era of horror movies with all this sort of remakes. Platinum Dunes. Well,
remakes, I have I guess a controversial opinion, because you can remake whatever you want. I don't care. I'm totally fine with remakes, because the main reason why I'm okay with remakes is because I feel like without remakes we wouldn't have had The Fly, we wouldn't have had The Thing, we wouldn't have had The Blob, we wouldn't have had The Crazies, which was a great remake, we wouldn't have had the recent Maniac movie, which was a great remake. I think you have to sit through probably 3 or 4 bad remakes to get through every one that actually works.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like that's true with horror in general. Like, I mean, I sit through probably 3 or 4 bad horror movies before I watch one good horror movie. Mm-hmm. And then I feel like a lot of horror is kind of roughly remakes of other movies anyhow. Like House of a Thousand Corpses, I don't think anybody would call a remake, but it's a remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, it's a remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre that they didn't call Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
So I think that like when you get into that realm of it, I'm okay with it. Like, do I kind of wish that they would come up with new ideas? Sure, but I mean, I think that's just a fault of horror in general. Because I mean, a lot of a lot of modern horror movies are just the same thing. It's just like, okay, well, here's the new spooky ghost, and they're haunting this family that just moved into a house, and they changed the name of the ghost and the backstory, but it's basically the same story. They're essentially remakes without calling them remakes. So I would like to see more fresh ideas, but I will say sometimes if that fresh idea comes in the form of a remake, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
So I guess that this is a long way of saying that I'm not opposed to remakes. I'm opposed to stale ideas.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, there's because there's sort of some things. Obviously, the three that you mentioned, Fly, The Thing, and The Blob. There's a couple that I've sort of heard about. That, like one, Elijah Wood's production company, Spectrevision, were trying to get the rights to Nightmare on Elm Street. I think that would be really cool. Like that would be something I would like to see. And things like Jordan Peele doing Candyman, I think is something I'd be really interested in. I think now that horror is getting bigger again, sort of in the mainstream, I think bigger names will be tackling remakes, and I think that'd be really cool as well.
Yeah. Well, and you also kind of have to give remakes a bit of credit for at least giving some of these franchises that have existed a fresh pair of eyes. I think there's a lot of modern horror fans out there that might not have heard of Evil Dead if it wasn't for the remake, and then they're like, oh, there's old ones of these. And also, if it wasn't for the remake of Evil Dead, would we have had Ash versus Evil Dead on TV? I don't know. I want to think that the success of that movie prompted the desire for the TV show, and man, did I love that TV show.
That's one that's always. I was actually going to say that when you said that. The Evil Dead remakes, one of the ones I sort of remember. I loved Evil Dead, and then when I went to see the remake, I was sort of like, oh, I don't know about this. Then I seen it. It's like the same, but also in the same way, it's a totally different beast.
Yeah,
I like that. I like that a hell of a lot. I really like that movie.
When
I'm the Evil Dead remake. I'm okay with. Like, it's funny because I don't have any strong feelings about it either way. Like, I mean, I enjoyed it, but I definitely don't feel like it's on par with the previous Evil Deads. It didn't feel as much like even the Evil Dead movie to me. It obviously had some of the right elements of an Evil Dead storyline, but just didn't feel Evil Dead to me. But I still enjoyed it. I thought it was actually a fun movie. I liked it. I've watched it like 2 or 3 times, and each time I watch it, I do enjoy it a little bit more. So I definitely would put it in that category of good remakes, but it wasn't one of those ones that like really stuck with me as being like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, I think with any creative medium of any sort, gaming, movies, music, etc., everyone's copying each other at a certain point anyway. Like the movie that comes out in 10 years because a young filmmaker saw Midsummer and took a load of ideas from it is probably going to be pretty good. It's a kind of vicious circle of sometimes it will work and sometimes it will be garbage.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes the garbage is fun. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because there's a lot of that kind of stuff, and it becomes a whole thing of familiarity. And my whole methodology anymore of trying to figure out whether or not something is just really standing out to me is like at the halfway point, do I know what's gonna happen? Mm-hmm. And I since you mentioned Midsummer, I'm going to use that as my example. But I had to spread Midsummer out over 2 nights. It's a very long movie, and I have a wife who does not have the late night stamina that I have. So we paused it and said, let's finish this tomorrow. And so I had halfway through the movie, I had time to think about it before we went into the second half. And I just kept thinking, I don't really know where this is going. And that's probably one of the best things in a movie anymore that I can possibly say. After Midnight was another great example of that, because it was just halfway through, I'm just like, I don't know where the end game of this is. Like, where's this going? And that's
I just remember watching that just remember watching that scene with my headphones on, and they went flying across the room.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
fight scene. Yeah. I was texting these guys here saying, "You're not going to believe what I've just witnessed." Like,
Yeah, it's a movie that was surprising. Just even even the non monstery bits, like the love story part, was kind of surprising to me because I really wasn't expecting. I wasn't really expecting it to go where it went. I'm gonna pull another movie out of here just because I literally just watched it yesterday. But I just watched a movie called It Stains the Sand Red.
oh yes, brilliant.
Which I was when I first started watching the movie. After the first 15 or 20 minutes, I was just like, I'm not feeling this movie. I'm just not. I don't know. Like I get where they're going with it, but I'm just not into it. And then like as it kept going, I kept being like, oh okay, okay, all right, all right. And by the ending of that movie, I was really invested in it. Number one, just because it was actually better written than I had thought it was going to be. But it was just that aspect of like they kept changing what the movie was, and like, but it worked. It didn't feel disjointed or like
No.
confusing. And I could never in a million years tell you what the final scene of that movie would have been from watching the first part of that movie. So it was one that kept me off guard.
One of the kind of super obvious ones that stands out to me is kind of one of the kind of earlier sort of memories I have of watching a horror movie was with my dad, and I came down from a room one night, and my dad had From Dusk Till Dawn on.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh yeah, come watch this." And I was like, "Okay, what is it?" And he was like, just wait." And I was sitting and I was like, "What is this movie?" And then out of nowhere, obviously, vampires. And I just remember being like blown away by it. And now, anytime someone hasn't seen it, I'm like, right, sit down, we're gonna watch it. Don't say anything. Yeah. I love stuff like that. You just don't know.
Just don't watch 2 or 3.
Well, I have to tell you, because I just did From Dusk Till Dawn not that long ago. And rewatching them, I did not like. I remember when 2 and 3 came out, and I remember watching them at like home and everything, and just being like, yeah. But rewatching them, I was like, these are all right. I kind of had fun with them, but I will tell you that I know this is apparently a controversial opinion over here, but I am not a Quentin Tarantino fan. I don't like the guy personally, and I don't really care for his movies. And I did see the first From Dusk Till Dawn in the theaters, and I just remember sitting through that whole beginning part and just being like, this just Quentin Tarantino. And then it's like that exact moment of them getting to the club, and it's like they get to the club, and of course all hell breaks loose, and I was just like, oh, okay, it's a Robert Rodriguez movie now. Okay, now I'm on board. But it's just like that. It's kind of funny because I've spoken to people that's when they start hating the movie. They're like, I like the beginning, but then when it turns into a vampire movie. So, I mean, I get it, but that's when I'm on board.
You don't need to worry about controversial opinions because we never agree on anything ever. I think that's half the reason anyone listens is because we just argue, basically.
Yeah, well, no, that's good. It makes for some fun listening.
Yeah.
And I know that it's funny on my channel. I try and stay away from, I don't get too controversial, but it is kind of funny because, oddly enough, I guess the things that rile people up the most is when, like, I think my most controversial episode was Revenge of the Nerds timeline, which was very strange that it was that controversial, but it was controversial because I called it out that, like, hey, these guys are supposed to be the nerds, but they're really, really horrible to the women. And at one point, the guy, like, literally rapes a girl. And it's kind of like, and I call that out. And people were really, really mad in the comments that it was just like, and I was being called PC, and they were calling me like a SJW. It's just like,
yeah.
It's like, all right, man, whatever.
Seems like a sort of walking on eggshells kind of thing, just having an audience on YouTube. It must be, especially sharing opinions about movies. People really, really care about movies. Like, it must be kind of hard to. Is there anything you sort of? I don't want to like put you on the spot. Is there anything you you don't like particularly, maybe in a, like horror movie wise, that's maybe universally loved. Like there's Joe just watched Aliens for the first time and he wasn't super big on it.
Wasn't a big fan. I watched the first one, so I hadn't seen any of the Alien movies for whatever reason. Everyone has those movies that just bypass them. But I don't know what your VHS collection was as a kid or whatever. You just miss movies sometimes. First one's amazing. Absolutely loved it, and just did not. There was really good moments in Aliens, some fantastic moments, but I just wanted everyone to never talk again for most of that movie.
Well, I have to admit, because I do love Alien. I love Alien, but I also do love Aliens because to me it's like it's a very different movie.
Yeah.
It's like but it's still it's kind of what we were talking about earlier, where it actually it's a very different movie. They changed it. Hold on, pardon me, 1 second here.
No problem.
It kind of changed everything about the first one, but it kept the continuity and the storyline. It makes sense. Like it feels like a different film, but it still makes sense with the flow. The third one not as much, but that's that. But I don't think I have anything that's like too. Like, I don't think I have any movie that I dislike that people would be like, oh, come on, really? You don't like that movie? I'm sure there's movies that I don't like as much as other ones. The movies that I don't like that people give me a hard time for are usually ones that are not in the horror genre. For example, I just I don't care for mob movies, so I don't really like the Godfather movies, and I don't really like Goodfellas. I'm not a Quentin Tarantino fan, and it's not that I think that those movies are bad, or poorly made, or dumb, or anything like that. They just don't appeal to me. So it's just like when someone says Godfather, oh, so great movies, I'm like, yeah, it just doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
So, and for some reason that makes people mad. That makes people more mad than anything else. I think the only other controversial opinion that I've actually gotten into, like, not an argument about, but a disagreement about, is was the Conjuring films, because even though and the reason why I have a particular dislike for the Conjuring films, because I'm a big science guy, and I'm kind of a big skeptic, and the Warrens in real life are terrible people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've spoken about that.
And they're scam artists, and they're flimflammers. And you have this movie that basically portrays them as these heroes and like these great people that are doing this awesome thing, and these pure people. It's just like, no, they're con artists. Like, they're literally con artists. And now you have this entire generation of horror fans that are like treating the Warrens as these like as this beloved people.
Yeah.
And like in the movie, in the terms of the movie universe, yeah, sure, they're heroes, but like their real life counterparts are anything but.
Have you seen the documentary? Is it My Amityville Horror?
I haven't watched that yet. My wife watched it. She really liked it, but I have not gotten around to that one yet.
It's interesting, but there's some kind of similar stuff in there where they sort of paint them as real exorcists, I guess. A bit like, yeah. No, it's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely get a certain kick out of the kind of Conjuring movies and those really slickly made modern horrors, but I'm not going for a kind of a horror experience. I'm just, watching a lot of badly made horror movies. There's a certain appeal to watching a really well-made one, but it's a very conflicting moral dilemma to be pouring money into their pockets,
I still watch them. I just the other day I freaking watched the Fantasy Island movie. It's like I'll still watch them, but yeah, it's just I don't expect anything good out of them. And if you're expecting anything good out of the Fantasy Island movie, you will be very strongly disappointed.
Do you know what? I don't think we ever got that because of coronavirus.
It was
We did for a week.
very briefly, and my
Yeah.
girlfriend really wanted to see it, and I was like, I can't do it. I'm not doing it. I can't go see it.
You don't have to. I kind of wish it was worse so that it could be fun, but it's
Yeah.
just
Oh, no.
it's just kind of bland. It doesn't really make any sense, and it's just kind of silly. But it's not silly in a good way. It has a couple of things about it that I really like. If you haven't, since you guys haven't seen it, I'm obviously not going to give any spoilers. But there's a character in the movie, and he's gay, and it's probably one of the most refreshingly well handled gay characters that I've ever seen in a movie, because like the fact that he's gay matters nothing to the plot.
Yeah.
And it's never like the character's not, he doesn't play gay. It's not like over the top. It's actually very subtle. And like it like really the only thing about it is like when they're all partying and it's like their fantasy is to have this big party, and like the one guy has a bunch of girls around him and he has a bunch of guys around him, and that's kind of like the only thing that matters to the plot. And I kind of liked the way that it was kind of in there. And I thought it was probably one of the probably the best handled gay characters I've seen recently, which is something that I never thought I'd be saying about Fantasy Island.
There was a couple of movies that a couple of things I'd wanted to mention. You did the 12 most obscure horror movies video.
Yeah.
One of the movies you talked about was Ghostwatch, which I'm obsessed with Ghostwatch. I think it's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, Ghostwatch so much fun.
I remember it wasn't on the TV when I was a kid, but there was like a sort of one of those countdown shows. It was like top 10 most controversial TV moments, and they talked about it briefly and showed a clip of it and talked about like what happened after it, and that scared me. That scared me, and then eventually it resurfaced because they hid it away for years and years, and I watched it, and I still think it's really, really cool. Like I think they've never done anything like it, obviously. Actually, that's a lie. But there's a show over here. I don't know if you guys will get it. It's a BBC show called Inside Number 9.
No, I've heard of that show, but I haven't seen it.
They did like a sort of homage to it. There was like an episode that was meant to be live, like a live Halloween episode, and then like it goes wrong live on air, and it turns out it's not live, and it's really, really cool. It's awesome. And then another one was Doghouse.
God, Doghouse.
Oh, Doghouse is Doghouse is so non-PC, but so good.
Yeah, well, but the funny thing about Doghouse though is that like I kind of feel as if Doghouse is it is non-PC, but it's also in a way making fun of the non-PC. Like
it's parody.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Like it doesn't seem to me it doesn't seem to me that it's kind of just like, oh, we're being so offensive and we're proud of it. Like, I mean, I think that actually it's kind of just more. And again, if you haven't seen the ending, I'm kind of, I guess, spoiling it here. But their own idiocy and macho bravado basically kills them in the end. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, and it's never treated as this like great trait. It's actually more treated as a kind of a crappy thing. But it's a ridiculous kind of movie. But I did really much enjoy it. It was a fun movie. That entire list I had a lot of fun making. I'm actually working on. I'm halfway through a list video that you're probably not going to see until like August or September at this point. Yeah. And it's actually more obscure stuff. It's 10 obscure horror comedies because I love horror comedies, and that's actually something I'm working on right now. I finished 6 movies, and I'm just finishing up the last 4. But my schedule, this has been a terrible year for my schedule, because I'll give you a little insight on kind of how I work out my channel. Is like I usually have the next 4 to 5 months blocked out in advance of like what videos I'm gonna do, and I usually tailor it around like what's coming out in the theater. Like for this year, I had planned back in April I was going to do the James Bond timeline, that was going to be on the action timelines. I was going to do a Fast and Furious timeline. I had a Ghostbusters timeline planned out. All these things were all like locked down and planned, and obviously COVID happened, and all these movies got bumped. So I had to like rewrite everything, and then I was like locked in at home, so I decided to just start watching really bad movies. So then I got a little bit of ahead of myself, and then my computer with all of my stuff and all of my scripts for all these episodes died. So I lost all of those scripts. So I had to like scramble to put together some other stuff. I'm in the middle of that right now. I'm in the middle of basically redoing my schedule. But I do have at this particular point, I have until I've revamped my schedule and I have everything plotted out till probably about September. And yeah, so it's been a little bit crazy with kind of scrambling to get things together. I do have a new show that I talked about in my 4th anniversary video that I'm excited about, called Dead Last. That it's not just me; it's actually me and a couple of people. There'll be a revolving guests in that. And we're about to shoot the first episode's shot, but actually the footage is on my computer, so I can't put that together. But we're about to shoot the second episode, which I'll give you guys a little bit of the background of there because I'm in the middle of rewatching them all. But we're doing a Nightmare on Elm Street series next and ranking those to see which is the best. Yeah. So it's been a bit crazy, but yeah. So you can look to see 10 obscure horror comedies, most of them from the 80s, because that was like the golden years of horror comedy.
The Nightmare on Elm Street one will be interesting because everyone seems to have a different favourite from that genre. Mainly it's Dream Warriors, but in the last 10 years, all of a sudden, Freddy's Revenge is shot right up.
That's been an interesting thing for me as well too, because so the way that we do Dead Last is me and my panel, we will rank them. So it's usually me and like 3 other people that are going to appear on the show. And then if you're one of my patrons on Patreon, you can submit a list as well too. So the patrons have had lists. So usually it's about 10 to 12 people, whatever that want to participate. And I tally up those ranks and come up with an average. And it's kind of fun because my wife is actually one of the panel members, so she's ranking them as well too, to have a non-horror diehards opinion on which one is really good. The Nightmare one, it's funny because I knew going in, like the Friday the 13th one, like honestly was crazy to me because almost every single list was different. Almost every single person's list was completely different. And when it came to Nightmare on Elm Street, I had a feeling what it was. And yes, the number 1 and number 2 spot are pretty unanimous, that everyone has the same 2 movies ranked first, but then everything else, all the other ones are completely all over the place. So that's pretty interesting. I think that the suspense of what will be the best Nightmare on Elm Street movie is not as great, because I think everyone kind of knows what the best Nightmare on Elm Street movie is. But I don't think a lot of people know what the worst one is.
There's going to be no suspense when you unveil the remake as the best.
Clearly.
No. It's just a bit.
That's such a shame though, because I like Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy Krueger makes sense in my head. It makes sense in my head, and then you see it on screen and you're like, oh, man.
It should have worked.
Yeah.
It should have worked. And he gave his all to that part. He was a good Freddy. He was a good scary Freddy. It's just the script just didn't work.
Absolutely.
It just kind of seemed all a bit lazy as well. You're watching it and you know what's going to happen, and there you go.
Yeah, exactly. The only interesting wrinkle that they had in that movie was they introduced the idea that Freddy may have been innocent in the first place, and he may have the families may have killed him, may have killed an innocent man.
Yeah.
That was probably the only interesting aspect of that movie, and it's just wasted. It's tossed off to the side 3/4 of the way through. They're like, oh yeah, we've whatever.
That's one of the ones we were talking about people like kind of coming back around on movies. One that I've seen recently is people saying that like the Friday the 13th remake, not saying that it's good, but not saying that it's not as bad as people said it was when it kind of first came out, which I think is interesting. I don't really remember any of it, which is probably isn't a good sign, but I just think it's funny how things change and like people can kind of come back around on horrors.
Yeah, that one. When I finally get this Dead Last Friday the 13th, you'll kind of find out how it ranks with people, at least in our discussion about it. I know me personally, I did not have it that high up, and I think that the reason why that one will always kind of be on the lower end for me is for the exact reason that you just said. I don't remember much about it.
Oh.
I just rewatched it a month ago. I don't remember anything that happened in it. Like,
Yeah.
I can name you at least one or two moments that happened in all of the Friday the 13th movies, even some of the worst Friday the 13th movies. Like, I mean, I hate Jason Takes Manhattan, but I can tell you at least 3 or 4 ridiculous things that happened in that movie.
Yeah.
But the remake, I think that there's a couple of things that happened, but there's nothing that stood out to me as just being like either like, oh, that was cool, or even just like that was ridiculous. There's really nothing cool or ridiculous. I mean, there's some good nudity. That's about it.
There's tunnels under the camp, and Jared Padalecki from Supernatural shows up.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much it.
That's my review of the remake.
There's yeah, I was gonna. I'm hoping that like that's one that they've been kind of tied up in legal battles and stuff for years. So I'm hoping that maybe that's one that we get a sort of good new one soon.
Yeah, I hope that whenever somebody does do something, I hope that they kind of shake it up a little bit, because I honestly I don't need to see another by the numbers retelling of the first movie again, and I don't need to see another guy in a hockey mask just stalking kids at the camp. Like, I mean, they need to do something fresh. They need to do something that's at least interesting. Because if they go the remake territory and then they just keep it to the whole thing of, oh, we want to take it back to basics and have Jason just stalking kids at Crystal Lake. It's like, okay, yeah, well, we've already seen that a whole bunch of times. I don't need to see a modern version of it. Yeah. So if they do bring it back, I would like to see something refreshing. We'll see. I guess we'll see if that even happens at this point.
I know it's kind of a shame. There must be years and years of scripts people have written just sitting there waiting that probably have great ideas in them, and it's like the Never Sleep Again, the Nightmare on Elm Street documentary, where they go over all of the failed ideas for Freddy vs. Jason, and they're all 10 times better than the Freddy vs. Jason that we got. But I guess it's easy to say that when they weren't made. But
yeah.
Those documentaries are great, by the way, too. And I should point out that my first, I'm actually kind of happy about it. The first episode of Dead Last, in which we talk about Friday the 13th, one of my guests is one of the guys that created the Never Sleep Again documentary and the Crystal Lake Memories documentary.
Yeah.
One of the guys that was behind the scenes of both of those documentaries is one of my special guests for the first episode of Dead Last.
That's awesome. Those documentaries are great. Like 4 hours of just Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street knowledge. Just it's so good.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on an hour, man. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I just want to ask some other questions just to round out.
So you're fine. I'm loving this. So this is I'm good. Family's upstairs. They're doing their thing. So this is all good. There's no rush.
I would like to know when you're ranking the Fast and Furious movies, so I can come on and explain why Tokyo Drift is the best one.
Well, okay. Well, here. Do you want to hear something surprising?
Yeah.
Because I've been talking about doing a Fast and Furious timeline for a while. I was going to do it last year when that Hobbs and Shaw movie came out, and then I just didn't. I found something else I wanted to do instead for that weekend. So I was just like, there's another Fast and Furious movie coming out next year. I'll just do it next year. And obviously now it's going to be next summer when it comes out. But so here you go. So here I have never seen a full Fast and Furious movie. I've seen about half of the first one, and I saw about 15 or 20 minutes of part 2, and nothing. I've never seen any of the other ones. So that one will be an interesting watch for me.
My personal take on those movies is that a lot of people, the same with horror, fall into the trap of kidding on that they like it ironically. Grow up. They're awesome movies. The second one's bad, but the other ones are great fun.
Yeah, I'm not like not looking forward to it. It's not like I haven't watched them because I've been like, oh, I hate those movies.
Yeah.
It's just they are the type of kind of movies that it's not really my cup of tea. But I'm sure that they'll be fun. I'm sure they'll be ridiculous. I mean, it's cars exploding and silliness. So I'm sure I'll have a good time watching Vin Diesel do all like both of his expressions.
Oh, it's so good.
They have a really interesting timeline as well. Actually, the way they work around some stuff. It kind of reminds me of like a horror movie when the series kind of like Friday the 13th gets more and more ridiculous as it goes on.
Yeah,
those movies are exactly the same. Like, the first one takes itself so seriously to the point where it's funny, and then it just gets totally insane.
I feel like with the third one, they kind of put it out to pasture and were done with it, and then someone somewhere decided, what if we spent $500,000 on each of these movies?
You know what? I know I'm jumping the topic here, but actually something just popped into my head. I don't know why this popped into my head, but you had asked me earlier what was the most complicated timeline to put together, and I said Puppet Master, but I'd like to change that answer to Saw.
So.
Oh. So good.
Like Saw.
Because the Saw movies, I don't. They're not really my favorites, but I don't hate them. I mean, they're enjoyable for what they are.
Yeah.
But that timeline was a nightmare, because even though I will say that I really felt as if, with the exception of probably like the later ones, like they actually cared about the timeline and they paid attention to the details of like when stuff happened.
Yeah.
But those were ones that I had to. I must have paused and went back and like stared at the screen and like tried to find the dates and everything like that and line up these dates. That one was complicated just because of how much it bounced around in time. So I know that I'm going back to what like a question was asked like an hour ago, but
no, you're all good.
But it just came into my head.
Yeah, that's one of my favourite series ever. So some of them aren't great, but the way it was marketed was it's the puppet killer movie, dead generic horror marketing, and then it turned out I really cared about the characters in the creepy puppet movie, which was awesome. I think it's great.
Yeah, it was a pretty ridiculous series, but I definitely didn't mind watching it. I think it's definitely dumb, but in a good way.
Yeah. And that most recent one, the sort of reboot, reboot, I thought was far better than it really needed to be. Yeah,
I haven't covered that one for the series yet, because that one came out after I had done my Saw timeline. But I will tell you that I'll have to, when I do my update, that one does throw the timeline completely into disarray.
Yeah.
I'm super interested to see what this Chris Rock song is going to be like. I don't know what that's going to be.
That should have been out by now.
Yeah, it's a shame. So many good. There was so many good stuff. So much good stuff coming out, and then we don't get it. The last movie I seen in the cinema was The Invisible Man.
Yeah.
It was like so long ago.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you the last movie that I saw in the movie. And so I haven't. My theater experiences are very limited because I have a 3-year-old. And so it's really hard to go see movies because it's either I have to go see them by myself, which is just, I just don't really feel like, hey, honey, I'm going to see a movie. See you later. or if me and my wife want to go see a movie together, we have to get a babysitter, and then that costs like going to the movie ends up costing us like $100 or so just to go to the theater because we have to get a babysitter and pay them. So I don't really go to the theater too much, which is kind of sad. But I watch a lot of stuff at home.
Yeah.
What do you think of the possible new post-coronavirus era where we're getting a lot of movies on demand and not so much in the cinema?
You know what? I'm on board. I will tell you that as somebody that really enjoys going to the movie theater, I don't. The experience has lessened for me. I just feel as if like the other people that go to the movie theaters anymore don't really have the same respectfulness of quiet and like and especially horror movies. There's a weird thing. There's a weird thing about new horror movies that really bothers me, which is I'll give you a specific example because it's one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to do. A couple of years back, I went to go see John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, which is about a bunch of people under siege in a church. I watched the movie in the church that the movie takes place in.
Wow.
First of all, it's a great movie. And second of all, it's genuinely pretty creepy and scary. And it's even scarier when you're sitting in the actual church where the movie takes place. And we're all watching a movie, and there was at least 3 or 4 people that just felt the need to laugh at like everything, at like all these moments that were like either kind of spooky or whatever like that. And they're like, it's just like, dude, no, that's not. Stop laughing. And every horror movie that I've seen in theaters recently, there's always like these couple of people that just like, I don't know if it's just like I need to show how brave I am because I'm gonna laugh at these things that are supposed to be scary or something like that. But it pulls me right out of the experience. And like horror for me is more of an immersive kind of thing. And the more people that are around me, the less I am immersed in it. So for horror movies, I'm all on board. Just put them out at home. I'll watch them here. Stuff like the Marvel movies, that kind of thing like that, I'll still go into movie theater to see because those movies are more fun to see it with a crowd hooting and hollering and everything like that. Like I'm cool with that. But horror movies, I'm hoping that more theaters go. The more studios say, let's just release it straight to home.
Yeah, I think the only issue becomes just pricing.
Yeah.
At least I don't know what the market is like in the States, but over here we can go see a movie for like maybe £11-12, and I think Trolls was the big one that came out when COVID hit on video on demand, and it was like 20.
Yeah.
So it's adding a pretty substantial cost to the experience. But I guess if you have a group together and split the price, then you save a ton.
Yeah, I think that's where it comes down to, is because for me it's like just exactly what I was saying. If we're paying, because I think the equivalent here is like we can go to the theaters and it's like $13 or $14. But then I think they have a charge of like $30 here. So for me and my wife to sit and watch a movie, it's actually costs the same. So for us to get it here or to go out and pay tickets for it, I mean, I feel like I wish it was a little bit less because we're not actually getting the theater experience of the gigantic screen and everything like that. But hey, I mean, if we have a couple friends over and all watch it, then technically we're only paying like $7. So that's kind of worth it.
Yeah, and it gets over the unconditional fear of spoilers in the cinema lobby, which I live right near what's one of the biggest cinemas in the country probably, and that's where I go see movies, and seeing Avengers and Star Wars in pretty close proximity to each other, with the lobby full of people loudly speaking about what has just happened in the movie, is something I want to avoid forever.
Yeah, it's that's Marvel movies. Being a comic book junkie and Marvel fan, Marvel movies are ones that I definitely have to go see. Like when they are out, because same thing. I don't want spoiled what's gonna happen. Last thing I need is to be standing in a theater and someone goes, "Hey, at the ending they beat the bad guy," because I never would have guessed that would happen.
It's something that I used to work in a movie theater, and I did the opening night of Star Wars Last Jedi, and it was a thing they sort of warned us about. They were like, look, when Force Awakens opened after it ended the midnight screening, people were like running through the lobby shouting spoilers. So like, don't do that. And you're like, what? What's the fun in that? Why take that away from people? Like, I don't get it at all.
I don't know. It's just like there's the decorum of theater going people has definitely dropped. I mean, I can't tell you how many cell phones I see out when I go to a theater. It's like people like I guess they think because they're not talking to somebody on the phone that it's not annoying, but it's like you get this big bright shining screen in your face. It's like
yeah. It is a shame when you think about well, for a start, how much money you pay to go, and then the movie going to the movies used to be like a big deal. People would wear like suits and stuff and go and go see a movie, and now it's like, let's go and throw popcorn at each other and have loud conversations.
A couple of months back, me and Stephen went to the theatre. They were re-showing The Exorcist. So it was kind of cool to go in and see the film in a theatre that scared people away from the theatre. And again, we've got the teenagers behind us, laughing and joking at Reagan crawling down the stairs and stuff like that. And it's kind of, it's distracting because, you're paying extra money for a film you've already seen to go and appreciate something that made its mark in the theatre. And it is a shame that the theatre sort of experience has lessened over time, but
I know.
It's all online now.
Well, that being said, I will say that probably one of my favorite film going experiences was what was it, like a year ago? Was Godzilla King of the Monsters, and the reason why is because have you guys heard of Mommy and Me screenings?
I think we have similar. Here.
Okay, so here's what a Mommy and Me screening is. Mommy and Me screenings is, look, don't come to this movie theater at this screening because we're going to show it Monday morning, and if you have newborn babies, if you have little kids, toddlers, there's going to be little kids at this theater, right? And they turn the volume down a bit so it's not like screamingly loud, and they don't turn the lights all the way down. The lights are down, but they're not super down. But so I took Stella, and she was like 2 years old at the time, and we go see Godzilla, and it was her first movie theater experience. And it's just like me and my wife take her to go see Godzilla Monday morning. And she's running around. Anytime there's monsters up on the screen, she's just like stopped and staring, and we're watching the monsters and everything like that. But in the meantime, she's just like walking through the aisles and everything. Like there was like us and two other people in the entire theater, and they had like a newborn, and it was like obviously like it was noisy. Like if you're going to like just watch a movie, it's like the worst possible way to watch a movie. But holy crap, was it fun, because I was like, anytime there was a monster on the screen, like Stella's like standing there staring and like looking at this giant monster action and everything like that. It was just fun. So that was probably one of the worst, I guess, film watching experiences, but at least it was a fun theater experience. I mean, it was my kid's first movie. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. One of the things I wanted to ask about is you kind of, I've mentioned a couple of times on the show about how you're not really a big fan of found footage movies.
Well, yes and no, because found footage is interesting, because found footage, like anything else, it's a stylistic choice.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of found footage movies that are bad, because I think that when you have a regular narrative horror movie that's bad, it's just a bad movie. But when you have a found footage movie that's bad, for some reason it's like amplified, and it's like 5 times the bad.
That's totally true. Yeah.
I feel like found footage can be fantastic. Wreck is one of is a great horror movie. It's fantastic, and if it wasn't found footage, I don't know if it would have been as effective. The Blair Witch Project is a great movie. I mean, I know that like watching it now feels a little bit weird because it's like it's been knocked off so many times that it just feels like the movie feels like a cliche, even though it was the movie that started the cliches. But it's a great flick. And I think that my problem with found footage movies is a lot of filmmakers nowadays make a found footage movie because they think it's going to be easier.
Yeah.
Because they figure that they can get away with more, that they don't have to do as much work and effort. But the problem is the found footage, for it to come off correctly, requires like twice the effort to make it good. And when it works, it works. In that list of 10 obscure movies, I think 3 of them were technically found footage. Because like Ghost Watch is sort of found footage. Lake Mungo is technically found footage in a way, and why can't I think of the name of that movie now? Savage Land, which was just a freaking great movie, was more or less found footage. But I mean, I love the VHS movies also. Were really, except the third one wasn't that great, but the first 2 were a lot of fun. So I think the found footage, it's like any other tool. If used properly, it's something that's great. But for some reason, found footage movies, when they're not done properly, they just fall way flat.
I mean, a point I wanted. Sorry, Chris, it's hard to talk
right.
over Skype because there's a delay. We just shout at each other at a certain point. A point I wanted to make earlier and forgot was you were saying there's going to be like tons of unused ideas for Friday the 13th movies and Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Most of those scripts are going to start with the cops finding a tape at Camp Crystal Lake, then it says these kids went missing and here's what happened. You know, like I feel like so many, whether they would have been good or not, I don't know, but they would have sold like so many of these classic horror franchises totally missed the boat on just it's a horror movie but Freddy's in it. A found footage movie but Freddy's in it, or it's a found footage movie but Jason's in it. I was pretty surprised that whole craze didn't kick off.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like a Friday the 13th movie being treated as found footage could certainly work. Nightmare on Elm Street probably not so much because of the dream stuff.
Yeah.
But Friday the 13th would probably lend itself to a good like found footage flick. But
we recently came across a found footage trilogy that I'm wondering if you've ever seen. It's called Hell House.
I've seen the first Hell House, which is just fantastic. It's actually a great flick. It falls apart at the ending. The ending is kind of like really, but everything. I thought it was really great. I have not seen 2 or 3 yet. I do have it on my schedule to do. I believe I have that planned out.
To hear that.
Yeah, I'm actually. I think that's going to be one of my Halloween movies this year. But I haven't seen 2 or 3 yet. But I haven't really heard good things about part 2 or 3 yet. So I'm not that excited about watching those. But the first one's great.
They were just more of the same. Not necessarily in a bad way, but you know exactly what those movies are going to be.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The first one is. I don't know if I would call it like an obscure gem at this point because I feel like it's gotten enough reputation, but it's definitely it's definitely a little underrated.
Yeah, that was kind of one of those ones we kind of found that one night just randomly scrolling through Amazon. We stuck it on, we loved it, and that was kind of one I've suggested to a lot of people now who ask because we'd never heard of it.
Yeah,
and it's just. I love finding stuff when you've never heard of something, you stick it on, and it's great. I love stuff like that. But that's definitely the best one.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like starting a movie with no expectations whatsoever, and also with no knowledge of what it is, and then just being completely surprised by it. That it's such a good feeling, like especially when you've never heard of it. I think it's pretty rare experience for us nowadays to go into a movie completely blind. I mean, we're such like a trailer and like upcoming movie news influenced society that's like, I feel like to have zero knowledge of something before it comes out is it's tough. I mean, sometimes we try and block it out. Like I was excited about Us, and I blocked out everything that I could. I didn't watch any trailers. I tried not to read any stories about it. I didn't want to know what it was about. And by the time that I got to see it, I was pretty in the dark. But there was no way to avoid everything, so I kind of knew a couple of things about it. It's just impossible sometimes to avoid. So when we can watch something that ends up being this great little gem that you literally went into 100% blind. It's a great feeling.
It's a shame because nowadays you actually get teasers for trailers. So you get like 10 seconds the week before, and then a new trailer will release. And it just is completely taken over. And like you said, it's a shame. Because when we were much younger, we were finding VHSs or DVDs, and that was it. You were getting that brand new experience. And I think that's, for me, is what built my love for horror.
Yeah.
And now you can't escape it. You're going to know what happens as you go in.
Well, I have a rule for trailers that I've stuck to for a while now, and it's actually improved things quite a bit for me. My rule for trailers is that if I already know that I want to, a trailer's purpose is to let you know basically advertise a movie, let you know what it is, and to get you to want to see it. So my rule of thumb is if I already know that I'm going to go see it, I'm not going to watch it. I just won't watch a trailer. Like, I mean, I know that I know because I like the Marvel movies. I know that if there's a trailer for a Marvel movie, why would I watch it? I'm gonna go see the movie. I already know that I'm going to go, so why would I watch it? But if I'm on the fence about something, like if I'm like, I don't know, let's see what this looks like, I'll watch the trailer, and sometimes just be like, I'll pass, or that looks pretty good. Okay, I'll give it a shot, and then I won't watch anything else from that point on. Once it kind of has hooked me in, then I'll ignore everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the kind of the last thing I remember doing that with, and it was purely because I barely knew the movie existed, to be totally honest. Was Underwater.
Oh yeah.
We were looking at what was on at the cinema, and that was there. We were like, we'll just go see this. Knew nothing about it. Did quite like it. It was basically Alien.
Yeah.
It was good. I like that. I love when that stuff happens.
I liked Underwater. It was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going off on another tangent. There is that because I another thing that I've noticed about I think a lot of modern movie fans is things are either awesome and like the best thing you've ever seen, or they're terrible and you hate them. And there's really there's none of that middle ground anymore of like, hey, what'd you think of that? It was good. I liked it. It's like everyone has to have. It's like the opinions kind of have to be of the extreme nowadays. Like, oh, it was awesome. It was so good. And Underwater was one of those movies that was good. I liked it. I can't rant and rave about it. It wasn't that great, but it wasn't bad. I can't talk smack on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does its job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was good.
I think it's one of those. It's one of those things where, like, I think people, if they either have to love it or hate it, because if they think it's just okay, then people won't want to read their tweets about the movie or something like that. Like, it's kind of like that. Yeah. Like, they want people to know their opinion, so they have to have a strong one.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And then that's I can't tell you. It's like I think that every single movie that exists today, every movie out there, no matter how good it is or how bad it is or whatever like that, there's people commenting it online calling it the worst movie ever made. Like there's people out there that think that Hereditary is the worst movie ever made. There's probably people out there that think that Underwater is the worst movie they've ever seen. I guarantee you that there's comments out there from somebody saying Underwater is the worst movie ever made, and it's just it's a weird thing. Every movie is somebody's worst movie ever made.
I think at the end of this year we should have for our end of year awards we should have the most fine movie.
The most okay movie.
Yeah.
The most okayest ever.
Goes to underwater. There we go.
yeah, pretty much.
I think mine so far for this year would be the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Movie's pretty okay.
I have not seen that one yet. I'm surprised I haven't seen it because of Stella, but I figured it would have been something I would have watched with her, but I have not watched Sonic the Hedgehog.
I was legitimately pleasantly surprised by its quality, I have to say.
Yeah, I think that was one of those movies that was helped by the negative press that it got earlier.
Yeah.
That I think everyone was expecting a train wreck. That like when it was actually all right, they were like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, that's because they released the Snyder cut of Sonic.
No,
We got to see that.
I'm wondering if that's going to continue to be a thing as well now that we've got the Snyder cut. Now people want the director's cut of Suicide Squad. Like, is this going to be a new thing now? Where like, are we deliberately going to get bad cuts of movies so that they then eventually get good ones like a year down the line?
I wouldn't be surprised if we get stuff like that for about the next 9 months or so, because I mean I don't know if a lot of people are talking about this or not, but you know we're going to be going into a time where there's going to be a huge entertainment blackout because nothing has been being filmed or shot for 4 months now. And so that's going to affect like the year, because I mean there's nothing being made. So whenever everything opens up again and everything's back to normal, no one's going to have product ready to go. So they're going to be trying to either, this could end up being a boom for horror, because horror is something that can be pretty quick and easy to shoot. So someone could go into a house, and for a week and film something really quick, and there's a horror movie. But it's going to be an interesting to see how people fill in those gaps, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were a lot of that kind of stuff where it's like, oh, we're doing a re-release of this with never before seen footage, just to get people to go to the theater again, because there's nothing else that they have to release.
And next summer, Blumhouse's coronavirus movie is going to do real well.
Oh, I know. Well, Full Moon already has one. I don't know if you've seen Corona Zombies, but Full Moon already threw one out. Granted, it's cheating because all they did was they took an old Italian zombie movie. I think it's Nightmare City. I forget which one they used. It was either Nightmare City or Hell of the Living Dead. They took footage from an old zombie movie and they basically dubbed over it with new voices. And then they just shot some stuff just with an actress. Like I think it was like her and her boyfriend filmed it, like, or whatever like that. And so it was just it was like her in her house and everything like that, watching the TV and everything. So it's pretty ridiculous. But I mean, there has been already the first Corona movie.
Asylum movies will do it properly.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Asylum is I can honestly say that not only are their movies pretty bad, but they, from on the behind the scenes thing, they treat their cast and crew pretty terribly as well too.
Oh really?
Yeah, they cheat their people out of pay, and they underpay, and they do not have good set etiquette.
Oh man.
I mean, I'm not surprised, but
No.
I know. Yeah, I mean, some of the low, but that's the nice thing. My wife works in the industry. She does work on these movies. She's in the low budget world. Well, was in the low budget world. She's now working on bigger budget things. But her first couple of years were on like low budget productions, and some of these companies just treated their people terribly. But some of these people did really well. So so that good on them for not being able to pay people, but at least treating them well.
Yeah.
It's a shame because there's a lot of stuff that came out about that Cine State Productions in Texas recently. I mean, you see the films that they've released recently, like A Ghost Story and VFW.
Yeah.
There's these gems, and then you almost start to feel guilty after a while because you hear the background, you hear people weren't treated too well, and
yeah,
the enjoyment almost gets taken out of it.
It is depressing because I know that a ghost story is have you seen a ghost story? Have you seen that one?
I've not, no.
I've
Okay.
not. We watched the FW the other night though. It was amazing.
VFW is a trip, man. I
Real
really
good.
enjoy it.
Yeah.
A ghost story is I don't want to oversell it, but it's a little bit of a cinematic masterpiece.
Okay.
It's a beautiful movie. It has its problems. It's not a flawless movie. There's a couple of things in the movie that are really tough to kind of get through because it's just kind of like, what the hell? And it's a gorgeous movie. I loved it. I ugly cried at the ending of it. I mean, I was like, it was very, very powerful movie to me. But it was lessened by the inclusion of Casey Affleck, who, like, by all accounts, is one of the worst human beings on the face of this planet.
Yeah, is he not cancelled?
He's pretty much canceled, but this movie was shot pre Casey cancel. And I will say that he's literally in it, like his face is in it for maybe 10 minutes at the most. So he's physically not in it. But still, that did make it a little bit tougher to kind of watch, knowing, what a terrible person that he is. But sometimes you do have to separate the product from the producers.
Yeah.
I will draw a line in the sand. For instance, I haven't done Jeepers Creepers timeline yet.
Yeah.
Mainly because I just don't want to give that slime ball more attention.
Yeah.
When I do a Jeepers Creepers timeline, you can bet that I'll be talking about that guy a lot. So there is sometimes where you have to draw that line, but I don't know.
No, I was just about to say when you mentioned that there. I've never seen Jeepers Creepers, and people always talk about it and mention it to me, and it's likely now that I just never will watch it, just because it's a shame this happens.
Jeepers Creepers. I'm going off on a slight tangent here, and then maybe I might have to book out here in a few minutes, but I will tell this story first. Jeepers Creepers the first Jeepers Creepers movies will always stick out in my head, and here's why. I went to go see Jeepers Creepers in the movie theater, and I thought it was a pretty good movie. But I went to go see that movie in the theater on September 10th, 2001.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
So I was there watching that movie that night, and I just remember thinking about that movie and thinking like, oh, that was a good scary movie and everything like that. And obviously the events of the next day changed everything.
Yep.
And I remember having a thought of, last night I was watching a horror movie for escape, and now I'm like living a horror movie. And it was a horror movie that I was close to, because the plane that went down outside of Pennsylvania, that was only 2 hours away from where I lived. And I lived not that far outside of New York City at the time. I mean, I was in Pennsylvania, but not close, but obviously I wasn't like extremely far away. So it was kind of funny just because I always remember that movie as being like this last little bit of escapism that I had before the world just turned into a nightmare.
Yeah.
So Jeepers Creepers will forever be implanted in my mind for that.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Okay, so we should, if you need to go, we should wrap up.
I should wrap it up. I gotta make a little kid some sandwiches, and I actually have to do some green screen work actually for. I'm rushing an episode to come out. I had a change of heart about my episode on Friday, so I'm redoing some stuff.
Right.
Okay.
So,
listen, thanks very much for all your time today.
Yeah, that was awesome.
No problem at all. This
was a
has
great
been
time.
fun, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And check out Movie Timelines on YouTube.
Yep. I was just going to say, is it Movie Timelines on YouTube and Instagram, and you have a subreddit, yeah?
Yeah. There's a subreddit that I will admit that I'm not not really involved in. And another guy created the subreddit. I do go there occasionally, but I'm not really that active there. Obviously, I try to comment and be as active as I can on YouTube with people and being interactive as I can. I have a rule that if somebody asks me a question, like if there's a question in the comments, I will answer the question. I can't answer every comment, but I will try and answer every question. So yeah, that's probably a great way to interact. Some people message me on Instagram, and I'll admit that I don't really check my messages on Instagram too terribly often. But it is a way that it's a way to get in touch. So I do check them. I'm just a little slower on Instagram.
Awesome, man. That's great. Thank you so much, and congratulations on 4 years on the channel, and just recently hit the 20k subscribers. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, especially, I was very. If you watch, I would have a video out there when I hit 2,000 subscribers, and I was like super excited. It's just like, oh, I can't believe 2,000. And I know that in the world of like millions of YouTube subscribers, it's not anything crazy, but 20,000 for me was a big deal.
Yeah, that's awesome. Right, so we'll let you go then and get to doing your green screen and stuff. So yeah, thank you so much, man. We really appreciate you coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again, Joe.
And if you need an advisor for the Fast and Furious timeline, you know where I am.
Okay, absolutely. I will reach out. And I guess the summer of 2021 now. Jeez.
Yeah. It's so far away.
And if you ever do the Wicker Man, we're just 20 minutes from the castle, so we'll get you some shots.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The Wicker Man is something I'll have to talk about at some point.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Thanks very much, guys. I appreciate it.
Right.
Yeah, you too, mate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.